Lies of P's 10th chapter, The Relic of Trismegistus, feels very strange. It is by far the shortest chapter in the game, and despite being set in a very lore-significant area, the game's story more or less ignores the lore implications of the area. What's more, if you look up while in the level, you can tell that there is a significant amount of level that's completely inaccessible. It's no surprise then that after release, some players discovered ways to clip out of bounds of the level, and were able to explore what looked like a mostly completed level devoid of enemies and items. In my second Lies of P lore video about the game's DLC, I even linked to a video where a user named Mesolimbic used out-of-bounds glitches to explore the inaccessible portions of the level. These methods of getting out of bounds were eventually patched out, making the area once again inaccessible through normal conditions. Today, with the help of a mod, specifically UE Tools Developer Console Free Camera Debugging, available on Nexus, I want to no-clip out of the game's normal geometry and explore this cut level, piece together what the likely progression through the level was intended to be, and compare it to a DLC level that seems to be a fully realized version of the original vision for Chapter 10. Let's get into it, shall we? The Relic of Trismegistus is accessed from Hotel Krat after it's attacked late in the game. We're able to take an elevator hidden behind Lady Antonia's portrait down into the relic. The first thing we need to establish is that, by no-clipping out of bounds, it becomes clear that Chapter 10 and the attacked variant of Hotel Krat are actually loaded as the same level. If you no-clip out of bounds in the attacked Hotel Krat, you can fly all the way into the Relic of Trismegistus level. This is not the case if you no-clip out of bounds from the original variant of the hotel. There are a few places in the game where it loads multiple levels as one continuous world space. If you think about it, you can probably logically intuit where these are. Rosa Isabel Street, the Estelle Opera House, Lorenzini Arcade, and the Grand Exhibition, for example, are all one level, with assets loading in and out as the player gets nearer to them. That makes sense if you think about it, because there's no load screen transition between those levels. The barren swamp, the destroyed version of Krat Central Station, and the city streets leading back to Hotel Krat are, likewise, all loaded as one continuous world space. Meanwhile, if you no-clip out of the original version of Krat Central Station, not only is the barren swamp not part of the map, but a large section of the Krat city streets you explore after the city is destroyed, like where you fight the Master of Illusions, doesn't exist either. Again, this makes intuitive sense if you think about how the game is designed. I'm no expert on the technical aspects of how games load content. If you are, please feel free to chime in and tell me why I'm wrong about all of this, but there's no sense loading in sections that the player won't see, or loading in pieces of geometry that the player would have no way of reaching through normal gameplay. If the player is going to go through a transition to another map, then you should put those assets in the next map. This is why, for example, while there's still an elevator shaft behind the space where Antonia's portrait would be in the DLC's version of the hotel, if you no-clip out of that version of the hotel, the Zelator laboratory level that elevator would lead to isn't actually there, because we transition to a completely different map when we take that elevator. The reason I bring this up is because the elevator in the attacked Hotel Krat is unique. While the cutscene that plays when you take the elevator in the attacked Hotel Krat down to the Relic of Trismegistus looks like a full level transition, it actually isn't. It's just teleporting us to a different spot in the same map. It is, as far as I can tell, the only elevator in the game that does this. This teleports us to a different spot in the same map instead of actually moving us along an actual elevator shaft or loading us into a completely different map. This tells us that at some point in development, we were probably intended to be able to go all the way from the entrance of the attacked hotel to the submarine we take to get to the Isle of Alchemists without a single load screen transition. This was all intended to be one continuous world space, like Rosa Isabel Street, into the Estelle Opera House, into Lorenzini Arcade, into the Grand Exhibition Hall. That elevator behind Antonia's portrait was probably not intended to be a cutscene or load screen, but an actual real-time elevator we would ride down. So that begs the question, where does that elevator shaft actually go? The answer is nowhere. A big empty space with some floating geometry blocks. The elevator you step off of in the finished version of the game when you take this elevator is completely disconnected from the one you got on. If you follow the elevator you step off of in the finished version up, it actually appears to have originally been intended as a shortcut elevator leading all the way back to the start of the level. There's a huge empty space between the bottom of the Hotel Krat elevator and the actual Relic of Trismegistus finished level geometry. Because we can assume that the hotel elevator was actually supposed to be a real elevator at some point, we can also assume that this large empty space with a few floating pieces of geometry was originally intended to be a large portion of the level or another chapter entirely, which you would traverse before entering the Relic of Trismegistus portion of the level. The closer we get to the finished section of the level, the more fleshed out this skeleton of a level is. Its most notable feature, near the entrance to the level geometry proper, is this large mechanical platform with a lever placed nearby. I am, to be clear, not the first person to notice this. I'll link to a Reddit post in the description by user RGIsOnline16, who discovered this cut section and concluded that we were likely originally meant to traverse all the way from Hotel Krat to the submarine. Just for the record, I didn't figure this out because of this Reddit post. I found the Reddit post after coming to this conclusion myself, but I still want to credit people who found this stuff before I did. As far as I can tell, no one else has figured out what this large mechanical platform was meant to be, but I'm pretty sure I know what it is. To explain, I need to orient you to where we are in relation to the finished portion of the level. There are 3 entrances to the more finished section of the level. The first 2 form a small U, dipping into the finished version of the level and then immediately back out. One of these, leading to a large elevator shaft, leads down into a small cliff path by the water, then dips into a room with a few carcass corpses. This room then leads to a dead end below the area with the large mechanical platform and a lever. If you look carefully, at the end of the playable version of the level, you can see a torch hanging from the cliffside portion of this path across from the final platform where you call the submarine behind a waterfall. Since we have a few points of orientation shared between the 2 versions of the level, Base Game Chapter 10 and DLC Chapter 3, as you'll see later on, we can easily navigate over to this harbor where we launched the submarine in the DLC version of the level and find that it is still there. From that harbor, we can still see the same torch and same cliffside path in the DLC version of the level, and we actually pass through it in the DLC by playing normally. The room that contained a few corpses in the cut level is now the gore room leading to the secret lab where you can find the alchemist's young gold coin fruit tree. Meanwhile, the path leading to the strange mechanical platform with a lever now leads to the room where you fight Veronique. While they reversed which side of the tunnel has an elevator shaft and which one leads directly back to the other portion of the level, it now becomes obvious that the strange mechanical platform seen in the unfinished version of this level was a prototype of the giant cooling device in Veronique's room, as they are placed in the exact same spot of the level. What this implies to me is that some version of the Zelator laboratory level was likely intended for the original game. The Zelator laboratory was mentioned in a lore note in the base game, so it's perfectly plausible that the large unfinished area between the Hotel Krat elevator and the finished but inaccessible portion of the mine was intended to be some version of the Zelator laboratory level all along. I won't speculate why this was all cut, but whatever the reason, their solution to this problem was to basically teleport the player to nearly the end of the intended Relic of Trismegistus level. It is incredibly cool to see evidence that the hidden laboratory beneath Hotel Krat was always planned as a part of this game and its lore, and makes it all the cooler to see it fully realized now in the DLC. The third entrance from the skeletal section to the finished portion of the level, which I'm pretty sure was intended as the main entrance, leads into what is very clearly a prototype version of the room where you fight the two-faced Overseer boss from the DLC. This version of the boss room doesn't contain the large piping on the sides nor the pile of dismembered bodies in the back of the room. Instead, we can see large glowing acid tanks beneath the grating in the floor. This gives us an important reference point, because if we look out the window to the left in both versions of the level, the cut version and the finished DLC version, the resemblance is immediately apparent. This cliffside overlook is where the elevator you step off of in the actual shipped version of Chapter 10 actually leads. Notably, this elevator is in the same spot where you find Lumacchio in the DLC version of the level. The bottom of this elevator is unreachable in the DLC under normal circumstances, but if we fly out of bounds, we can find that it still leads to an area identical to where we enter the Relic of Trismegistus in the main game. Although the cave tunnel that would lead to the rest of the level is rocked in. If you make it out of bounds down to the base of the elevator in the DLC, it actually turns out that this spot has no collision in that version of the level. All of this makes it obvious that the DLC version of the Relic of Trismegistus, the abandoned Ergo excavation site, is in fact a modified version of the same map from the main game. In my Lies of P Overture video, I said the abandoned Ergo mine wasn't literally the same geometry as the cut level, and that is technically true. There are substantial differences, as we'll see, but upon closer look it becomes clear that the two levels were built from the same layout. They are more similar than they are different. The major landmarks are all there. This is not immediately obvious while you're just playing the game, because the sections of the map that we actually visited in the main game are never traversed in the DLC map, and vice versa. They take place in the same space, but different sections of that space. Again, I'm not the first person to notice this, and I want to credit people who found this before I did, so I'll be linking to another Reddit post, this time by user PotentialBrain9789, who also made this connection. Back outside the prototype two-faced Overseer room, we continue forward around the side of the cave, like we do in the DLC version of the map. To the left, where there's a shortcut in the finished version of the level, we instead find a drop-down into what I assume was some sort of ambush or loot room. After this, there's a shaft upwards, which was likely meant to include a ladder leading back up to the main path. Beyond this detour, as in the DLC version of the level, we come across some bridges over to a rocky outcropping. Rather than diverting to the left to head into a large mine room, however, we drop down and continue across more bridges. There's a damaged bridge connecting to a ledge we can't quite reach above us, so for now, we'll continue through a cave opening into another room with more wooden scaffolding, chains hanging overhead, and crowd crystals extending from the walls. There's a small, hard-to-see path on the left side of the room, which spirals down into a huge grotto. Just past the entrance to this room are two small patches of floating yellow motes, possibly meant to be fireflies. Immediately to the left of the entrance is a hidden path, which looks like it was likely meant to hide an enemy ambush. To the right as you enter is a ramp. Running up the ramp either leads to a drop down onto some scaffolding in the room with the chains, likely intended to be home to an item placement, or another tunnel leading back to the overhang and damaged bridge we couldn't reach earlier. The gaps in the damaged bridge are short enough for P to jump them, but the other side of the bridge is a dead end, indicating this was likely once home to a high-value item. Back in the grotto, if we cross the first bridge, we're met with a fork in the road. The path to the right dead ends at an overlook of the main chamber we started in, where we can see the harbor where we find the Pistis sub. If we fly to get a better look at this waterfall, we can see that it is the same waterfall we can see right by the bottom of the elevator where we enter the level normally. What's interesting is that this waterfall corresponds to one in the DLC version of the level. There, we can find a similar waterfall coming from the large mining room where we encounter the alarm and rock-throwing puppets. This indicates that the large mining room was a reworked version of the idea behind this grotto room. Back at the fork, the left path leads to its own option between two cave tunnels. These end up at the same place, just serving as a low road or high road to get there. These paths both lead into another small cave with crowd crystals growing out of some water. One interesting detail is what looks like some sort of sluice gate in the water with a Vanini Engineering logo on it. Past this room, we make our way back into the main chamber, and then into another medium-sized cave room. There's a small overlook connected to this, immediately dead-ending. The other tunnel from the cave chamber leads to our last unused section of the level. This is the platform that you can see directly across from the elevator where you enter the normally accessible portion of the level. This contains a small wooden platform to the side, which I suspect was originally meant to connect to the platform with an elevator, which would serve as a shortcut leading back up to the two-faced Overseer's room. There's also a small ramp leading down, which immediately dead ends. The final platform is another recognizable location in the DLC version of the level. More specifically, it's the platform where you find the Pistis Harbor Stargazer and find Rizara. In the DLC, what was the dead-end ramp from the original level leads down to the metal platform where you fight a shield robot and lower the submarine to walk across it. At this point, the two levels basically completely diverge, with the remaining section of the DLC level being wholly different, and the rest of the level from the main game seemingly fully accessible. And with that, we've fully explored Lies of P's cut chapter and how it was restored by the DLC. This is different from the style of video I usually do, but I love Lies of P to death, and I found all of this super interesting as I was exploring it just for my own entertainment and wanted to share. If you're a first-time viewer and you like Lies of P and want to hear about how the game adapts the original Pinocchio, as well as a deep dive into the story of the game, please check out my first Lies of P video, How Lies of P Twists Pinocchio's Origins. And if you'd like to hear my take on the story of the DLC and its many connections to the base game, check out my second Lies of P video, The Complete Story of Lies of P Overture. If you're a returning viewer, or you just liked the video, please consider subscribing. I've contracted that disease that YouTubers get where seeing that number go up is the only thing that allows my brain to release serotonin now. Special thank you to my YouTube channel members and Patreon supporters. If you'd like to see exclusive videos and get your name in the credits of future videos, check out patreon.com/Zuldem or click join down below the video. Chaotic. Pizza Requiem. Dusan Kovacevic. Rules in Place. Raxarox. Unhealthy Caillou. Sir Darkon. Aurelia 14. Alan Fortes. Sam P. from New Zealand. Schmandolf the Schmay. Kirsten. Captain Swing. Der Freischütz. Devale. Mouse V. Lieria. Theo D. Noah Phoenix. The Smallest Church in Wienerville. Gassan Abanura. Patrizia Frabetti. Sninkelberg. Ziggy the 31st. Frondi, Yo-Yo Jojo Mojo, Tsai Voafehi, Dan Luther, Jose Armalas, William, Cabbage, Rekka, Alex Smith, Pete Lee, Shiny Emptyhead, That's All, Bell Mage, and Malachi Murphy. Until next time, everyone, take care.